What's up, car audio enthusiast? Today we're going to talk about isobaric speaker configurations. Back up until the point of about 1992 or 93, um, technology was still kind of building, right? And so people had fairly low amounts of power they could produce in a car because of the problem with 12 volts and all that. But they also had a limited space. And this made car audio kind of weird because you had these 12-inch drivers. This is a 12-inch subwoofer, by the way, in case you didn't know. They had these 12-inch drivers mounted in these big, huge enclosures to be able to play low frequencies. So, in order for that thing to be able to continually and faithfully reproduce a low frequency tone, it had to be in a very large volume of air. Now, at some point there, the power began to be a little bit more reliable and a little bit higher output, but they still had drivers that needed these big, huge boxes. So what they would do at that point was they were taking two drivers to these massive 25-inch subwoofers. I'm just kidding. They would take two drivers and mount them like this. Well, essentially, they'd space them out a little bit. But what they would do is it would create a situation where the moving mass of both drivers was connected together by a plug of air. They could also mount them this way. So you would have a cylinder around this that would handle this. So you would end up with a mounted like this, the air sealed off in the middle. This is called an isobaric mounting solution. And what that enabled them to do was put twice as much power because they're carrying two subwoofers. They could put twice as much power on it. They would double the mass of the moving mass of the subwoofer. They would also double the motor force of it, and then they could mount a single sub sticking out. The other one would be inside the box, and they could use half as much airspace. So essentially, the car audio community created a twice as heavy, twice as strong, twice as power hungry subwoofer that would fit in half the space of the traditional. And Kicker, ironically, being the amazing brand that they've always been, saw this and go, hey, you know what? We could do this. We could make this into a single driver. Because as you can see, this takes up more space than this inside the box. So it's also twice as much and twice as hungry. So they come out with a subwoofer called the Solo Baric or the Isobaric N1, right? And it seemed like a marketing gimmick. I know. But in all actuality, it was an amazing invention. And even today, the Isobaric or Solo Baric subwoofer has been copied across the entire spectrum. Every subwoofer out there uses a similar premise to accomplish the same goal now. But that was brought forth and brought to us by Kicker. So, what advantages and disadvantages do we have here? Well, okay. Advantage one, small woofer, old school woofer, like late 80s, early 90s woofer. Very light, very thin, light mass, and low power. Now, these guys running back then had to sacrifice one big thing to make this work, and that was tons of space. They needed big enclosures, or they needed to mount them infinite baffle style, because drivers back then were all in the same range of being 0.707 in their QTS. Now, whenever you have that 0.707 Q, that means the driver can effectively play in no enclosure at all because all of the spring that it needs is built into the driver. As long as you're using the right power, it can just play, which means you can put it on a piece of wood, the hole in it, and it'll play like a subwoofer. as long as you disconnect that backspace to the listening area by an infinite baffle, you're good. Well, that worked great, except guys were putting more power on them than they were rated and all that. So, you started getting into speakers tearing themselves apart. And the plus side was they sounded really good. The downside was you tried to get them too loud and, destruction. And so that's when they went to the Isobaric or the Isobaric configuration. They could put twice as much power on what would effectively be a single cone, right? Sticking out of the box. They could put twice as much power on it because they had more power now, you see? And they could get those low frequencies to play in a smaller enclosure and still not blow up the speakers. This was really a cool thing. It was really it's funny that the car audio community actually invented their own thing. They invented this idea. And what Kicker did was take a concept, an idea, and reinvent the driver to fit that profile. So they followed the community and created something that would work better than mounting two speakers in the same enclosure. And it was a big deal. And I definitely applaud Kicker for doing this, because they have innovated and brought a lot of things to our community over the years. And this is just one example. But if you're wondering what an isobaric mounting solution is for, why it exists, or if you're just wondering about Kicker and the Isobaric driver and where that name came from, now you know. Anyway, guys, peace.